Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on quite a complex philosophical mission.
We certainly are.
We're wading into some pretty deep waters of 20th and, well, 21st century thought.
That's right.
We're looking at Martin Heidegger, a towering figure, obviously, and comparing him with a more contemporary philosopher, Lee Braver.
And the focus is really specific, isn't it?
It is. It's about a single but really radical divergence in how they think.
Yeah, and this divergence, it's crucial because it really shapes how they think we interact with reality itself, the nature of truth, even the possibility of, well, genuine self-discovery.
Right. So the core issue, digging into the source material, seems to be whether our main way of being is defined by what Heidegger called world projection, or if it's more like what Braver describes, which sounds closer to just having a worldview.
Exactly. World projection versus worldview. And it sounds subtle, maybe.
It does sound subtle.
But the argument we're exploring today suggests this nuance leads to a complete, well, a total philosophical reversal in how they understand everything else.
Okay, so before we get into the reversal, let's set the stage. What's the common ground? Where do they start from?
Well, they both build on Heidegger's early work, specifically from being and time.
Right.
The concept of the ready to hand, Zuhandenheit.
Yes, the idea that we mostly encounter things not as neutral objects to be studied, but as, well, tools, right? Things integrated into how we use them.
Precisely. Like a hammer when you're hammering, or a keyboard when you're typing. It sort of disappears into the activity itself.
You don't analyze its weight or material composition usually, you just hammer?
Exactly. You just use it. It's immediate engagement. Heidegger called this Daseins our way of being there. It's kind of default state.
Okay. And Braver takes this?
He takes this and he connects it with Wittgenstein's idea of language games.
Okay.
And for Braver, this synthesis points to a really fundamental mode of being he calls absorbed, engaged coping.
Absorbed coping. So like a flow state almost.
Kind of. It's non-representational. We're not standing back thinking about the world in that state.
We're just doing it.
We're doing the world, yeah. It's immediate. It's creative. And Braver argues it's more fundamental than our conscious conceptual thinking. It's what lets us navigate life without constantly stopping to, analyze everything.
Right, without that kind of constant intellectual friction. Okay. So that's the shared starting point. Where does the divergence, the trouble, begin?
Well, the critique we're unpacking today argues that Braver, when he characterizes this absorbed coping, he subtly, maybe unintentionally, restricts Heidegger's much more radical concept of world projection.
How so?
Instead of seeing projection as this foundational ontological act world-making, really Braver seems to read it more narrowly as simply the formation of worldviews, conceptual schemes.
Ah, okay. And a worldview implies a framework,
Yeah.
right? A structure, a system of values or beliefs that's sort of set before us, before a subject or maybe a community.
Exactly. It's something
Yeah.
we look at or operate within.
And why is that reading problematic from, let's say, a deep Heideggerian perspective?
Because, the sources argue, this reading traps Braver right back inside the very thing Heidegger was trying to overcome, what Heidegger called the metaphysics of presence.
The metaphysics of presence.
Or, as Heidegger famously termed it, the age of the world picture.
The world as picture. So by defining our relationship to the world through views or schemes, Braver is kind of presupposing that the world is fundamentally something observed, something pictured by a consciousness.
That's the core of the critique. Even if that consciousness is embedded in practices and usually operates non-consciously, the fundamental structure is still one of a subject relating to an objectified world, a picture.
The moment you say view, you've basically set up that subject-object relationship, haven't you? Even if you're trying to say they're really close or engaged.
Precisely. So our mission today, our deep dive, is to really unpack the mechanics of this distinction, projection versus worldview.
And to see why it leads to such a complete reversal in how they understand key concepts. Things like authenticity, freedom, otherness.
Alterity, yeah. And even modern technology. It flips everything on its head.
We need to figure out why one philosopher's route to what looks like mindfulness is, for the other, just a deeper kind of mindlessness.
That's the puzzle.
Okay, let's start with Braver's side properly. You mentioned absorbed, engaged, coping as this inseparable Schalt matrix. That sounds, well, complex. What does it mean for our everyday experience?
It means our experience is fundamentally holistic. It's never just a collection of separate things or neutral facts.
Right.
The meaning of anything, let's take your smartphone, for example, it doesn't come just from its physical properties, its circuits and glass.
Okay.
Its meaning, its very being as a smartphone, comes from its function within this whole web, this constellation of involvements.
Like
communication networks, social media apps, the economy around it, our social anxieties about connection or missing out, and importantly, your specific purposes right now. That whole web is the Gestalt matrix.
So the world never just shows up neutrally. It's always already meaningful based on our concerns, our projects, our community.
Exactly. It already matters to us. If you see that smartphone, you might immediately see it as a tool for work, or as a distraction, or as a way to call family, depending on what's going on for you. And this points to what the sources call this deep complicity between the ideal and the empirical.
Complicity. How so?
Our human concerns, our goals, our shared ways of doing things, that's the ideal element, you could say. And that provides the structure, the intelligibility for the world we encounter, the empirical stuff. Reality gets structured by us, even if we didn't consciously sit down and design that structure.
Okay, so this smooth, absorbed coping is our kind of default expert way of being in the world. But where's the danger in that, according to Braver? Why is smoothness a threat?
Well, for Braver, the danger lies precisely in that smoothness. If our ways of seeing the world, our worldviews, become too effective, too self-confirming, we risk getting so absorbed in the, let's say, frictionless working of it all, that we fall into a state of mindlessness.
Mindlessness, not just being distracted, but something deeper.
Deeper, yeah. It's a failure to recognize what he calls radical otherness, things that don't fit the pattern. We just smooth over difference, dissolve anything new into what we already expect. We become, rigid, cognitively and culturally stuck.
I can see that. Like, if you're a programmer maybe, and you're so deep in your code, your specific tools, your team's way of working,
Right.
that you never step back and ask, wait, what's the actual point of this software? Does it serve a good purpose? You're just executing the plan smoothly.
Exactly. Braver argues this kind of unreflective, mindless absorption is behind a lot of the dangers we see in modern technology and social conformity.
Conformity, like Heidegger's Dasein, the they self.
Precisely. He sees it as a kind of fallenness into Dasein, just doing things the way they do them, the anonymous, conventional way. We stop noticing the things we rely on. We take their existence for granted.
And what's the alternative he wants?
He wants us to attend to the that it is-ness of things.
The that it isness.
Yeah, their sheer existence, their unique presence, the kind of wonder that they exist at all rather than not existing. Their unique luminosity, he calls it.
But hang on. Didn't we say that for the ready-to-hand tool to work smoothly, it has to withdraw? Become inconspicuous?
Yes.
So Braver seems to be saying that the very inconspicuousness, the smooth functioning, is the source of the mindlessness. Isn't that a contradiction?
It seems like one,
Yeah.
but that is his argument. For Braver, when things go smoothly, when the tool withdraws into inconspicuousness, that leads to thoughtlessness.
Okay.
The flow state, while efficient, can numb us. It numbs Dasein to the uniqueness of what's actually there.
So what's his solution? How do we escape this numbness?
His prescription is to achieve explicit awareness of these pragmatic structures we're caught in.
Make them visible.
Make them visible. Exactly. He wants the tool and the whole network of relations it's part of to become conspicuous again, to light up so we can see the pattern, examine it critically, maybe change it. He's looking for a jolt, something external usually, to break the spell.
So for Braver, smooth functioning is the problem.
Yeah.
And making the underlying system conspicuous, bringing it to conscious attention, is the solution. That's how we escape the mindless routine.
That's precisely his model. He relies on moments of breakdown, disturbance, shock things that force that explicit awareness. And it's exactly this reliance on conspicuousness, on making things present and explicit, that opens his view up to the Heideggerian critique.
Okay, so here it comes, the reversal. Braver says, make the structures explicit, make them conspicuous, to wake up. How can Heidegger possibly argue that doing that is actually a deeper form of concealment? Intuitively, seeing the structure seems better than being blind to it.
Right, that's the counterintuitive part. The core difference lies in what happens when that structure becomes conspicuous, when we make it explicit. Heidegger argues that the moment we notice these pragmatic structures explicitly, they stop being ready-to-hand tools woven into our actions, and they show up instead as present at hand, vorhanden.
Present at hand. Okay, that's a key term.
It's absolutely central. Here's the critical insight from the sources. For Heidegger, Disclosing things as present at hand, as explicit objects or conceptual schemes lay out before us, this mode of disclosure mindlessly conceals beings as a whole. It hides more than it reveals, ontologically speaking.
So the moment I step back from my routine, say, as a teacher, and I analyze the structure of my role, the curriculum, the power dynamics, that structure becomes an object for my analysis.
Yes.
And in objectifying it like that, I'm somehow stripping away its true being or something deeper.
You're stripping away the connection to being itself, to the whole context. The present at hand isn't just a technical term for object. It's the dominant way of revealing beings that, Heidegger argues, defines the entire history of Western metaphysics, going back through Descartes, even Plato.
How does it define it?
It insists on defining reality based on its stable, enduring, self-persisting presence. Its availability for observation, measurement, calculation.
Okay, we probably need to break down what counts as present at hand then. It sounds like it might not just be simple physical objects.
Definitely not. We can trace maybe 3 key ways or modes in which this presence of the present at hand has been understood, according to Heidegger's analysis.
Okay, what's the first?
Mode 1 is persisting objective presence. This is the classic metaphysical view. Think Descartes' res extended substance. Things are defined by their constant measurable properties, their mass, shape, duration, independent of how we use them or what they mean to us.
Right, like a chair is defined by its wood, its dimensions, its weight, things a physicist could measure, not by its sitableness.
Exactly. It persists through time as this bundle of objective properties. That sets up the classic subject who observes the object.
Okay, that's mode 1. What's next?
Next comes a major shift, especially in modernity. Mode 2 is algorithmic ordering. This is the cybernetic turn. Yeah, think information technology, modern physics, systems theory. Here, Heidegger argues, presence itself changes its character. It loses that solid objectivity of mode 1.
So it's not about enduring substance anymore. What is it about?
It becomes about orderability, calculability, availability within a system.
Orderability.
Everything, including us, gets pulled into what Heidegger calls the standing reserve. Bestand. Things aren't primarily objects anymore. They're resources. Energy, data, inventory, potential, all just waiting to be commanded, optimized, arranged, calculated, set in order by some system or plan.
Wow. Okay, so a forest isn't seen just as a collection of individual trees, mode 1 objects.
Right.
It's seen as timber resources or carbon credits or biodiversity metrics, a standing reserve of quantifiable stuff to be managed.
Precisely. That's the technological mode of revealing, which Heidegger calls inframing, Gestell. And it applies to humans, too. We become human resources, data points, consumers to be targeted.
That feels very, very contemporary. Our data, our attention, global supply chains. It all feels like standing reserves being ordered. The chair isn't just a thing. It's inventory item, #34B, optimized for shipping, tracked in a database.
Exactly. And this framework, where everything's just stuff to be ordered, leads directly to the ultimate form of this metaphysics of presence. Mode 3. The world is picture.
The world is picture. This is what you said Braver gets trapped in.
This is the core metaphysical epoch, yes. The essence here is representation in German Vorstellen. Literally, to place before.
Place before.
The subject humanity actively sets forth the world, brings what is present at hand before itself, and forces reality into a relationship with the one doing the representing.
So the human being basically appoints itself as the stage, the viewpoint, the subject.
Yes.
And everything else has to show up on that stage as an object, as a picture for the subject.
Precisely. Man becomes the measure, the center, the one for whom the world exists as a picture to be grasped, manipulated, controlled. The subject-object split becomes totalizing. Even thinkers trying to escape subjectivism, Heidegger argues, often remain trapped here, setting up some principle like Nietzsche's will to power as the force that generates the picture or the values. They're still generating worldviews.
Okay, now I see the connection to Braver much more clearly. If Braver relies on paradigmatic worldviews or value systems or conceptual schemes, like Thomas Kuhn's paradigms in science, to explain how we make sense of reality, then he is fundamentally assuming this Warnell's picture model, isn't he? A conceptual framework set before a subject or a community.
That's exactly the critique. He's operating within the age of the world picture.
Yeah.
And it also affects how he sees technology's problems.
Oh, so?
Braver sees the conformity of modern life, the Dasein, as arising from our tools becoming too smooth, too inconspicuous. We get stuck on autopilot. But for Heidegger, The problem of technological enframing isn't that the tool's function disappears. It's that the instrumental function itself, the whole means-end structure, the plan, becomes supremely conspicuous as the organizing principle.
Wait, that seems contradictory again. If I'm executing a plan smoothly, isn't the plan itself kind of inconspicuous?
The details might be, but the logic of the plan, the fact that everything is being ordered according to a calculative instrumental rationality, mode 2, that becomes the conspicuous ground. We become hyper-aware of how the efficiency, the process, the ordering, while losing sight of the what or the why in a deeper sense.
I think I get it. So the conformity isn't from the tools vanishing.
No.
It's from the entire system of instrumental control and ordering becoming the obvious, conspicuous reality we inhabit. We're very mindful of the process, the system.
But utterly mindless of being itself, that it is.
So Braver thinks making things conspicuous is the cure, but Heidegger says that very mode of conspicuous objectified presence is the illness, the trap of the world picture.
That's the reversal in a nutshell. One sees conspicuousness as salvation. The other sees it as the height of concealment.
Okay, this has huge implications for what counts as authentic existence or genuine disclosure. Let's look at Braver's view first. You said he links authenticity to external disruptions, right?
Yes, he focuses on experiences that kind of knock us out of our smooth, absorbed coping. Things like disturbances, breakdowns, maybe moments of anxiety or uncanniness.
The classic existential jolt.
Exactly. He thinks these dislocations rescue us from stagnation because they make the tool, or the whole network of meanings it's part of, suddenly conspicuous. It appears as this temporary, self-present otherness, an alterity that breaks the frame.
The hammer breaks, and suddenly you see the hammer itself, the nails, the wood, the whole project. The system lights up.
Right. And in that conspicuousness, Braver sees the chance for reflection, for conscious choice, for maybe changing the pattern. It's a moment of alterity that allows for freedom.
But Heidegger pushes back hard against this. He uses that distinction, the ontic versus the ontological.
Crucial distinction.
Yeah. Let's clarify that with the broken hammer example. What's happening ontonetically versus ontologically?
Okay. Ontic disclosure is about revealing beings within their context, their relationships, their usefulness or brokenness. So when the hammer breaks, we suddenly see it as broken. We see its relation to the nail, the wood, the task, the need for repair or replacement. The whole workshop, in order to scow a structure, becomes visible. That's ononetic.
And that's what Braver thinks is the valuable moment, the awakening.
That's what he focuses on. But Heidegger says, wait, this is still just disclosure of beings. It's still operating within the realm of the present at hand, even if it's a broken present at hand thing. You're concerned with fixing the tool, managing the situation, still instrumental thinking.
Okay, so what would ontological disclosure be then?
Ontological disclosure is about the unconcealing of the meaning of being itself. The disclosure of beings as a whole, the event of worlding.
Beings as a whole.
And the fundamental problem with Braver's solution-making, the tool or the network conspicuous, is that this act of focusing attention is actually a narrowing of vision. It brings one being or one system of beings into sharp focus.
But loses the background, loses the whole.
Exactly. It doesn't disclose beings as a whole. In fact, Heidegger argues it actively conceals the whole.
How does focusing on the broken hammer conceal the whole? I'm still thinking about the roof, the house.
Because the very act of focusing on the hammer as a present-at-hand object, even a broken one, imposes a certain structure of understanding. It isolates it, makes it an object of concern for you. And even breakdown, Heidegger argues, is met with familiarity. It happens within a larger context of meaning that we already inhabit. We see the broken hammer as a broken tool needing fixing within our familiar world. We never encounter pure, raw otherness this way.
He says, one always sees something as something. Even the unknown is seen as unknown.
Precisely. You impose an as structure derived from the world you're already in. So, by focusing on the conspicuous object or system, you're actually creating a specific, limited kind of disclosure that, by its very nature, obscures the deeper, totalizing event of being.
It's like maybe listening to an orchestra. If I intensely focus just on the sound waves produced by the second violin, making its physical presence hyper-conspicuous,
Yeah.
I completely miss the symphony, the music itself, which emerges from the whole, right?
That's a great analogy. Making the part present at hand obscures the whole. So for Heidegger, for authentic unconcealment, for Aletheia, truth as uncovering to happen.
What needs to occur?
Two withdrawals need to happen.
Yeah.
First, The tool, as an objectively present thing, must withdraw back into smooth, inconspicuous use, the ready to hand.
Okay, disappear into use.
But that's not enough. Second, that whole realm of smooth, instrumental, ready-to-hand activity must itself withdraw, recede into the background of beings as a whole.
So the tool disappears, and then the usefulness itself disappears.
Into the sheer event of the world's presence, the sheer that it is. Only when the instrumental concerns fade can the ontological dimension, the meaning of being, stay forward.
Wow. So Braver's focus on breakdown and making things conspicuous is, from this view, actually preventing the deeper truth from emerging. It's a step away from ontological disclosure.
That's the core of the critique. Authentic truth requires the inconspicuousness, the withdrawal, not the lighting up of objects or systems.
Which brings us squarely to world projection. If it's not a worldview, not a conceptual scheme we look at, what is it for Heidegger? And why is radical temporality so key here?
Okay, the big difference is moving from a psychological or epistemological model to a fundamentally ontological one.
Right.
Braver's reading sounds more psychological. We use our past experiences to anticipate the future. Our choices are constrained by circumstances we're thrown into. It's kind of linear.
Past shapes present, present anticipates future goals. Seems logical.
But Heidegger flicks this completely. He says Dasein is world projecting. Or, even more dynamically, the worlds through Dasein. Projection isn't just anticipating based on the past.
What is it then?
It's a foundational creative act. It's a casting ahead, Entwerf, that actively brings back to the present, from out of the future, a new world. A new context of meaning from which things can then be encountered.
It brings the world back from the future. That sounds very strange, like we're creating reality moment by moment.
In a way, yes. Ontologically speaking, Dasein is always ahead of itself, Heidegger says, but it's ahead of itself in coming back from its future. The future isn't just a point we're heading towards.
It's an active force.
It's an active force that constantly reshapes the now. The possibilities we project towards actually reconfigure the meaning of our past and present as we move. The meaning of the world is generated out of this future projection.
Okay, if the future is actively shaping the present, then time can't be just a sequence of now points like beads on a string.
Exactly. That leads to his concept of temporalization.
Temporalization.
It's the idea that future, past, and present aren't separate stages. They completely interpenetrate. They happen together in a single, unified event of the world's unfolding.
How does that work?
Think about projecting towards a future possibility. In resolving towards that possibility, Dasein simultaneously retrieves its past and shapes its present in light of that future. The whole temporal structure shifts together.
So back to the as-is structure, seeing something as something.
Yes. That as is governed by the total context of relevance, the world. When Dasein projects towards a new possibility, even a tiny shift, the entire context, the whole world, is sort of torn away for a moment and brought back from that future slightly, perhaps imperceptibly different. A new world projection.
And that transforms the meaning of everything within it.
Instantly. The whole structure of relevance gets reconfigured by this temporal movement.
Okay, this has got to change how we think about the self, too. It can't just be about playing a social role, like Braver might emphasize.
Right. In Braver's framework, Dasein's, for the sake of which its ultimate purpose, might be concrete things, like being a teacher or building a house tied to specific tools and goals. But the sources argue that for Heidegger, authentically, the self's, for the sake of itself, isn't a fixed role or goal you can point to.
What is it then?
It's the possibility itself. The continually remade possibilities that are generated by this constantly shifting, transfigured world that Dasein is thrown into through its own projecting. The self is its possibilities, and those possibilities are born from this temporal unfolding.
Wow. Okay, and this connects to thrownness. Orphanheit, too, doesn't it? Braver sees thrownness are birth circumstances, accidents as external facts that limit our choices.
Yes, he sees it as constraint on projection.
But Heidegger...
For Heidegger, according to this critique, projection and thrownness are fundamentally the same movement. They are synonymous aspects of Dasein's being.
The same...
Heidegger says things like, in projecting, that Dasein constantly throws himself into possibilities. We project a future, and that projection is the act of being thrown into the world configured by that future. We throw ourselves and are thrown in the same temporal act.
So we're thrown into the world that we ourselves project, and that throw remakes us and the world constantly.
Every moment. It's a radical kind of agency, but it's tied into this deep temporal structure, not just conscious decision-making.
So authenticity can't be about consciously choosing to step outside one worldview and into another one. That sounds too deliberate, too static.
Exactly. That's the braver model, maybe. For Heidegger, authenticity is something much more intimate and ongoing. It's the resolute awareness of this constant self-displacement of the world happening right now. Through you, is being aware of the transit.
That's it.
And Heidegger describes the feeling of this awareness, this mindfulness, as being startled, dismayed, wonder-filled.
Why dismayed?
Because you realize the ground is always shifting beneath your feet. But also wonder-filled, because you realize the other, the difference, the change, isn't somewhere external you need to invite in. It's internal to the same.
The other is internal to the same. That's the paradox, isn't it? How can the world or the self stay the same if it's constantly being altered, thrown into otherness?
Because the transformation is continuous, intimate. It's not that one self is replaced by a totally new one. Dasein remains the same, but differently. It maintains its continuity through the perpetual alteration brought about by the future projection. The self is the continuity of the transition.
Okay. So the critique is that Braver misses this. He misses this constant internal self-world transformation happening even within the most seemingly rigid structures.
Yes. He sees conformity and needs an external shock, a conspicuous breakdown, to fix it. Heidegger says the displacement, the otherness, is already humming away quietly inside the structure of time itself. Braver's looking for the earthquake, while Heidegger's pointing to the constant continental drift happening beneath our feet.
Okay, if the world is this constant, maybe quiet, self-altering transition, let's explore that feeling of authentic disclosure more. It sounds paradoxical. You mentioned the work of art earlier as an example. How does it embody this?
The work of art is key because, for Heidegger, it uniquely holds together seemingly opposite qualities.
Like what?
It combines the shock and jolt of strife, of bringing forth something new and unsettling.
The disruptive element Braver likes.
Yes, but it combines that with a profound non-interruption, an inconspicuousness, a steadiness. It rests within itself. Braver tends to emphasize only the shock, the disruption, the strangeness made conspicuous.
But Heidegger says the steadiness, the inconspicuousness, is just as important.
It's essential. The shock that the work is, its sheer unique existence, is only possible because of its steady, non-interrupting presence. It doesn't just shout its strangeness, it holds its strangeness quietly.
Just remember we said the tool has to withdraw into inconspicuousness for smooth use?
Yes.
Is that withdrawal the final goal?
No, it's a necessary step. The tool's withdrawal into handiness is the prerequisite for the next withdrawal. The withdrawal of handiness itself into the background of beings as a whole.
Okay.
And that background, beings as a whole, reveals itself as this steady constancy within which the shock of the that it is can erupt. You need the quiet background for the unique figure to appear without being reduced to just another object.
Let's contrast that with the tool again. When a tool is working smoothly.
It's that its sheer existence vanishes completely. It becomes ordinary, forgettable, submerged in its function.
Right.
But in the authentic work of art, Heidegger argues that it is as such a work is precisely what becomes extraordinary. The work kind of throws its unique character forward, projects itself, and the more it does that, the more luminous, the more astonishing becomes the simple fact that it is and isn't just nothing.
So that it is luminous, that luminosity Braver wanted.
Yes.
Heidegger finds it here, but paradoxically through a kind of profound inconspicuousness, a steady resting, not through making it a conspicuous object of attention.
Exactly. If you made the work conspicuous in the wrong way, by analyzing it just as a present-at-hand object, pigments on canvas, physical properties, you lose the extraordinary that it is. The source material talks about how the most extrinsic, the sheer fact of its unique existence, must somehow be the most intrinsic part of the work's truth. Making its instrumental function or objective properties prominent, as Braver might advocate for tools, actually hides the being of the work as a whole.
So this disclosure of the as a whole, it's not like discovering a pre-existing landscape. It sounds more like creating it.
It's described as a making of what will be. Authentic disclosure isn't passive reception. It's a productive seeing that first brings forth what is to be seen.
Bringing forth?
Think back to the A structure again. Taking something A as something isn't just labeling. For Heidegger, it's a ground laying. You establish a ground, a context of meaning. But every ground laying is simultaneously a displacement of a previous ground. Every time Dasein genuinely encounters the world, sees something as something new through projection, it subtly remakes the ground, displaces the old world picture.
Okay. And Braver misses this dynamic.
The critique is that Braver flattens this temporal, creative, displacing act into something more static, like comparing propositions within a fixed logical system or worldview. He misses the constant dissolving and relaying of the foundation itself.
So the revelation is shocking because the ground shifts, but it's also steady because Dasein is the continuity through that shift.
Exactly, it's the continuity of the displacement. And recognizing this, feeling this constant transition, is maybe the deepest form of self-intimacy. You understand yourself not as a fixed thing, but as this ongoing temporal event.
This constant movement, it sounds almost like being absent from any fixed point.
That's a fascinating way Heidegger puts it. Authentic disclosure involves absencing the nullifying movement of transition. Man is caught up, enraptured in this movement, and so is never merely present in the way an object is present at hand. We're always partly removed into our having been and our future possibilities. The moment we try to capture the world or ourselves as a static picture, we conceal this essential flowing absence.
Okay, let's try to wrap up this incredibly dense deep dive. We need to summarize the core philosophical stakes for you, the listener.
Right. On one side, we have Lee Braver's model, which leans towards the worldview. The world is understood primarily as a conceptual structure, a shared scheme.
And change or authenticity comes from outside.
Largely, yes. It requires external shocks, conspicuous breakdowns, moments of alterity that disrupt the smooth functioning and allow for conscious reflection and choice to change or loosen the scheme.
Okay, that's one side.
Then you have the Heideggerian critique, insisting that the world isn't fundamentally a picture or a scheme, but this constant, dynamic event of world projection.
Rooted in temporality.
Rooted in radical temporality, where the future constantly remakes the present and past. And crucially, the true beyond, the alterity, the source of change, isn't external. It's already internal to the same, operating as this relentless engine of displacement within the temporal flow itself.
And this difference, it really challenges our usual ideas about freedom, doesn't it?
Completely. It undermines the common notion of freedom as simply making a conscious, deliberate choice between different options or worldviews, like picking from a menu. That's the freedom of the subject, standing before the world picture.
So what does Heidegger offer instead?
A much more intimate, perhaps unsettling form of freedom. It's the freedom inherent in the continuous transformation that is our being, rooted in temporality. We don't just make choices. We are the temporal unfolding through which possibilities arise and grounds shift. We are the transition.
Which leaves us and you with a final provocative thought to maybe mull over.
If genuine mindfulness, if authentic awareness, isn't really about lighting up some object or scheme that's already there, but instead about finding yourself, recognizing yourself in the very midst of this constant transit, this ongoing self-displacing event that is subtly remaking you and your world every moment.
Then how does grasping that, really letting that sink in, change how you perceive your own life, your sense of continuity, your personal style, even your feeling of self-intimacy?
Are you fundamentally looking at a world picture that you need external shocks to break free from? Or are you, perhaps more profoundly, the very transition itself, constantly coming back to yourself from the future, always the same yet always different? What does it really mean to be that constant, intimate displacement?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.